हाँ हाँ sorry. Yeah, hi everyone. So, this is the third week that is going on. So far as this particular course entitled Water, Society and Sustainability is concerned, and I have seen that most of you are actually doing your assignments, and number of questions are also coming. So, there are some interesting questions and some factual questions as well. So, I would like to just go by these questions one by one and try to address this, so that the queries that you had raised can be taken up. So, there is a question on why government is going for privatization of water distribution companies for increasing conservation of water. So, I think I had talked about a particular book called Water Wars, Privatization, Pollution and Profit by Vandana Shiva, which is a very significant book that shows the trajectory that how water has been commodified since the last few decades. And this particular history of commodification, to a great extent it stretches back to the colonial era as well. But so far as privatization of potable water is concerned, then of course we must say that 1970s, 1980s, more importantly 1980s and also the first half of the 1990s, from where this neoliberal period, the neoliberalization era began, all these things were getting privatized, including water. So, you can see that how the various water companies, including Coca-Cola, Bisleri and also the soft drink companies like Pepsi Cola and all, how like they were privatizing water and how people were being deprived of their water entitlement on one hand. So, the vulnerable marginalized communities, rural communities, they were being deprived potable water on one hand, and on the other hand the state was actually trying to play the role of a collaborator, where the state was joining hands with the transnational corporations and trying to accumulate some profits. So, this is the scene for the last 2-3 decades, and the effects of the privatization of water has really been deleterious and mostly affecting the rural poor, the urban poor, people living in the slums and the squatters, and also today we find that there is another important population which is also increasing today with what is known as peri-urbanization, and which is a very prominent feature of urbanization in global south. So, the peri-urban poor, they are also being deprived of what is known as good quality potable water, because most of the cities, when they are expanding, unfortunately the water networks are not expanding, keeping in tune to the expansion of urban spaces. So, what is happening is on one hand we find lack of availability of network infrastructures in these areas, and on the other hand there are also very important questions relating to water quality. So, most of these people, most of these households, peri-urban households, poor households, they depend on groundwater, and the groundwater quality sometimes is not very good. For example, what we find from the peri-urban Indian spaces, for example peri-urban Bangalore, or for that matter peri-urban Kolkata, the condition of groundwater is really bad, and this water is not treated, and people directly consume this untreated groundwater as to meet their thirst. So, this is what is going on, and so there is another interesting question, that why can't we establish mud cut based tube wells for protecting groundwater against exploitation. Yes, so there was a very interesting debate I think 2 years back between Kollan Rudra on one hand, who is currently the chairman at the West Bengal Pollution Control Board, who has done lot of works, who had extensively worked on the lower Gangetic basin, water supply, and also he has done a lot of works on floods, Gangetic floods as well. So, he is an expert on river system because he is trained in geography, in the discipline of geography. So, on one hand there was Kollan Rudra, on the other hand there was the researcher from IMVI, Colombo, Sri Lanka, where she was trying to argue that West Bengal actually does not suffer from from lack of groundwater, but they are the policies, we do not have adequate management policies, due to which we are not being able to harness the groundwater. But Kollan Rudra definitely critically interrogated this particular argument by scientifically coming up with findings that this is not the real picture, because the groundwater table in West Bengal, like many other parts of eastern India and also parts of South India, is really falling down. So yes, for example, smart card based tube wells for protecting groundwater is an important option. It can be a significant option, and we know that some countries, for example, countries like Singapore and also different European countries for that matter, they have very interesting technologically smart innovative techniques to protect groundwater and also treated river water. But unfortunately, maybe in some parts of India these strategies are being thought of, are being implemented, but they are unfortunately not at scales. So my argument is that we have to really come up with context specific solutions, keeping in tune to the local needs and local specificities of particular regions. So these are interesting innovative options, but then we also need to really look into the challenges and potentials of implementing these options and where we are actually implementing this. So these are the things that need to be taken into consideration. Then there are some other questions also relating to the role of private water tankers in urban water policy. Yes, this is also a very interesting a fundamental issue which has been raised by the participant, and lot of interesting works are now being conducted by researchers from different institutes, mainly the private institutes as well. For example, I can remember some very interesting large scale research projects had been conducted by Sachi Waters. So Sachi Waters is an institute, an institute which is based in the south in Hyderabad, and there are few other institutes in Bangalore as well, who had, for example, IIHS, Indian Institute of Human Settlements, they had also conducted some studies on the role of these private tankers in the metropolitan cities. So on one hand we find that where there is the lack of what is known as public driven policies, on the other hand, as there is a lack of public driven policies, so we find bottom up needs driven policies, and this functioning of water tankers, it actually fall within this need driven strategies. And so the researchers are showing that how these tankers are playing an important role in providing potable water supply in different parts of the cities, where the cities are actually disconnected or not connected or does not come under network infrastructure. But then very interestingly, there is also a lopsided, there is also another side, there is also a disadvantageous side to this particular issue of the mobility and the functioning of water tankers, because we also find water mafias. And these water mafias, what they do is that they are extracting groundwater rapaciously, they are extracting groundwater without paying anything to the government. For example, if you take the example of the city of Kolkata. So Kolkata, till now we do not pay any tax, any water tax to the government. So what happens is that people, they just, if they have the power, they have the technology, if they are they have strong political lobbies, if they have strong corporate lobbies, then they can really extract water from anywhere, from ground, from other surface water sources, and they can sell this water, and they can actually turn this into a business. And this is what is going on in cities like Bangalore, Kolkata, etc. So finally what I want to argue is that on one hand we have these private tankers playing important part, part supplying dried parts of the city, but on the other hand there has been the emergence of what is known as water mafias, and there can be a very interesting social history of water mafias so far as the operation of the private tanks are concerned. Questions? So, then there are few few not questions, but maybe comments, and one participant has written that water management and current critical issues of rain-fed agriculture. So, he wants to know more about that, and also wants to know about urban storm water management system in the context of Indian cities, as it often causes urban flood situation. So, again this is a technical question. So, I do not think I will be much in a position to take to answer this question from the technical point of view, but then I can just remember of the storm weather flow system and the dry weather flow system so far as the city of Kolkata is concerned. And one must understand and remember, which is very important, which this course actually tries to address, is that one needs to understand that this has a long history. For example, if you just take a look of this SWF and DWF system in Kolkata, you will find that it was designed and developed and implemented long back during the 1850s, when William Clark, he was a British engineer behind this, and how actually he designed this particular system in order to separate storm water and dry weather flow. But then that system, which was so strong, which was so significant for the city of Kolkata since those days, since the 1850s, but then what had happened today to it, like what are the challenges that it is facing. So, how even sometimes storm water and domestic water, industrial water and different other forms of effluent are not being treated properly, because what is happening is that on one hand there is a demographic pressure, there is so the population is increasing, urbanization is increasing. So, the urban space is expanding, the cities are expanding, and on the other hand these systems, for example storm water management system, dry weather flow system, these are not at par so far as the demographic growth and the spatial growth of cities are concerned. So, this is something which we also need to know the ratio between the maintenance or the balance or the parity between the maintenance, preservation, restoration of this storm water flow system on one hand, and the spatial expansion of cities and the demographic growth of cities on the other. So, there are then questions relating to like why can't we install natural purification process systems in rivers and end of wastewater collecting tanks to purify water. So, I have certain solutions to provide purification process of water. This is really fascinating. So, I would request the participant to really elaborate on this, because he writes that I have certain solutions to provide purification process of water. So, it will be really good if you can really come up with these solutions. And so, I would like to from my own knowledge, so far as some of the recent projects or developments that are going on. For example, IIT KGP itself, it is really playing a very important role so far as the treatment of wastewater is concerned, and not only the treatment of wastewater, but how to actually even also transform wastewater to potable water. So, I can talk about two examples, very recent examples. So, in one case one particular research center has been set up very recently at IIT Kharagpur, and on the other hand there is a faculty person who has with his startup grant, with his startup seed money, which is a part of his ISIRD project, how he has actually created a multi filter purification plant in one of the nearby villages in this particular area. So, it is a nearby village a few kilometers from the IIT campus, and how he has created this purification plant, and each and every household, each family just needs to spend 1 rupee for getting treated purified water. And this is a very interesting experiment where we and the fascinating part is that it is not only the story of technological innovation, but it is also the story of management, it is also the story of the community willpower, community innovation, and how technocrats on one hand, technocrats, engineers, government agencies, people, the rural households, community together, they can participate and really come up with these kind of innovative solutions. So, the land in which this filtration system or the purification technology has been set up, this is the land of some farmers in the village. So, they have donated the land free of cost for for the betterment of the village, so that the village people, the village households can cater to the water needs. On the other hand, the technology that has been so far as this technology or the technological component is concerned, IIT Kharagpur has played a leading role. And then there are the rural people, the communities themselves, who are taking care of the entire system, because the IIT KGP resource person, they had actually trained these community people after this particular project has been installed. So, during the post installation phase, the communities themselves have become active and they are maintaining it. So, it is a very interesting example where communities, researchers, technocrats, and everyone together, they are being able to fulfill their need of getting potable, purified potable water only against rupee 1. And these rupee 1, so this an estimation exercise has been done by which the researcher could come up with the fact that this rupee 1, if rupee 1 is spent by the 60 household, so rupee 1 per household for 60 households every day, then the current and existing need can be taken care of. So, this is an interesting example. On the other hand, as I was talking about a particular center that has been set up by IIT Kharagpur, this is called the Re-Water Research Center. So, here the whole idea is that how to not only treat wastewater, but how to also transform wastewater into potable drinking water, right. So, into potable water. So, there will be a pilot testing. For pilot testing, the technological setup will be ready by March 2019, and we are very fortunate that we have very good and efficient and truly human alumni who are ready to do whatever possible under the sun to cater to the needs of the society. So, this has actually happened, and now what will be done is that in the pilot phase, so as far as I could understand, is that 1.35 million liters of wastewater will be treated, and it will get converted into 1.2 million liters of water daily. So, this water from the hostels, so wastewater from the hostels, 1.35 million liters of wastewater from the hostel will be converted to 1.2 million liters of drinking water every day. So, and if this exercise, or if this if the method turns out to be successful, then after this pilot will be followed up by large scale implementation plan. And so, this is also not so it does not have the technological component only, because there are other components. For example, there will also be a very strong advocacy component in this, because if this method turns out to be successful, then at the next level, and then the head of the center, he has also assured that first we will check the quality of water. So, if we see that yes, this experiment has really turned out to be successful, then the different cities will be approached, the municipal governments will be approached, and then of course, there has to be some kind of lobbying and making the people understand, because it is not easy. People will, at a go, they will not realize that it is safe to consume treated wastewater, but then so there has to be some kind of awareness generation, and there are multiple other steps that had to be conducted. So, political steps, social steps, many other steps, where many NGOs and maybe community based organizations and civil bodies or civil society will get involved, and how they will also talk to or collaborate with the municipal government, and how these technology can then be implemented at scales across cities, which can then really play a major role in meeting the drinking water crisis in some of the cities in India. So, yes. So, these are the positive stories, these are the recent innovations that are taking place, which help us to be a little optimistic. Then there is a question by a participant where he says that what has been the motivation behind this topic. So, I would really love to take up this particular question. So, what has been the motivation? So, really there has been whole lot of motivation behind taking up this topic, which is water, society and sustainability. So, there are three keywords: water, society and sustainability, and three keywords, they really have equal weightage. So, one needs to really understand that, as I had mentioned in, I think there are some presentations in the first week of which you had already completed by now, because those were scheduled to be during the first week of this course. So, there is one particular topic called hydrosocial. So, hydrosocial, it talks about the cyclical interactions between water and society. So, here neither water is the subject nor water is the object, neither society is the subject nor society is the object. So, one really needs to understand the that if there is an equilibrium, if there is a kind of a metabolism between water and society. So, if there is a metabolic relationship between these two, then only we will be able to address the issue of sustainability. Otherwise, only large infrastructural projects, only big investment policies and projects and programs will not be able to solve our water crisis, because for the last number of decades, actually this is what is going on. For example, now I will come to one interesting and not interesting, but one unfortunate incident that is happening, and the implications are very severe, the implications are massive. So, yes, I am hinting at the Kerala floods. So, recently I just saw one particular argument by the VC of the Center for Budget Studies, where Leta mentions that this why there has been Kerala floods and what needs to be done. So, the VC argues that the floods had actually occurred due to the malfunctioning of the dams. So, what needs to be done after these floods? So, what should how can we really rebuild Kerala? So, the solution that has been provided is that it is very simple. So, in that report it is said that if we can effectively monitor the dams, if we can really come up with a proper and effective monitoring policy, then only we will be able to regulate floods. We will be so floods will not turn to be a disaster. But is this really true? Can only this technological solution solve the problem? Do you think that these floods actually had occurred due to limitations and problems so far as only this the technological design or technological implementations had been concerned? So, I will now talk about like the Madhav Gadgil committee report, which was prepared, which was ready to get launched in 2011. And so, what happened is that in 2010 the Environment Minister Jairam Ramesh asked Madhav Gadgil, so who is a very renowned ecologist. So, he was the Western Ghat ecology expert, and he was asked to come up with a report for this entire Western Ghat region, traversing across 6 states, including the southern states of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, and also Maharashtra, the western states of Maharashtra, Goa and Gujarat. So, Madhav Gadgil, he did rigorous research for a year, and then in 2011 his team could point out that this particular region, the Western Ghats, and more specifically they pointed out that like they created a boundary. So, if you can see the map, you will find out in that report that like they argued that roughly 1,30,000 square kilometers of land within Western Ghats, it comes under what they said ecologically sensitive area. So, ESA. So, they said within this 1,30,000 square kilometers ESA, okay, there are several small ESZs, that is ecologically sensitive zones. So, what needs to be done is that in these entire ecologically sensitive area and especially in these ecologically sensitive zones, there should be some strict prohibitions and there should not be any violation so far as these prohibitions are concerned. For example, they said that the mining activities, construction activities, urban sprawl, several other developmental projects had to be banned, because otherwise this biologically rich area will totally get disrupted and it will totally affect the ecological balance of the entire zone. And so, if you go through the report, there are whole lot of factual details in the report, but unfortunately what happened, these particular report, it was not approved and it was not given, it did not get its due importance. So, what happened that in 2013, 2 years after this report was completed, then the recent Environment Minister Jayanti Natarajan asked Kasturi Rangan to validate whether the findings in the Madhav Gadgil report is true or not. And what happened, yes, Kasturi Rangan and the team came up with a report where they mentioned that yes, the Western Ghat region, it is actually, it is not approximately 1,30,000 square kilometers, but it is approximately 1,60,000 square kilometers. So, people would be happy knowing that even that report actually it increased the area, the area, but what happened is that they said that this area 1,60,000 square kilometers then has to be divided into two areas. So, 60% of this particular area, it is they argued that can be classified as cultural landscape and remaining 37 to 40% was the biological or the ecological landscape. So, what happened is that, so 40% means like roughly 60,000 square kilometers should only be considered as biologically rich. So, one can understand that while Madhav Gadgil and his team pointed out that 1,20,000 or 30,000 square kilometers is the ecologically sensitive area, the 2013 Kasturi Rangan report pointed out that it is only 60,000 area where these illegal activities, mining activities, construction activities, development activities have to be banned or stopped. But unfortunately, last year what and if you just focus on Kerala, then you will find that if you take this 2013 report, then according to that report 13,000 square kilometer of Kerala was within that ecologically sensitive area. But last year what happened, even the Kerala government slashed from that 13,000 square kilometer and pointed out that only 9,900 something square kilometers comes within the ecologically sensitive area within Kerala. So, what has been done? So, what had we done? We had actually we had not followed the laws, litigations and the warnings that had been generated by experts, and today we are facing these disasters and we are not been in a position to tackle these disasters. So, the motivation behind this course has been that if we need to solve the water problem, solution again comes at a much later stage. Even if we really want to, or if we really want to be aware about the problems, if we are able to identify the problems, then we have to actually take the larger picture into consideration. It is not only about water, it is about several other things which are embedded with water also as a whole. So, it is so the water society relationship is an inextricably complex, intertwined and embedded one, and if we understand this embeddedness, then only we will be in a position to address the issue of sustainability. Otherwise, only looking into water from the technical point of view, from the technical perspective will not solve our problem. So, this has been the motivation. So, the motivation has been to make technocrats and bureaucrats and engineers understand the social and cultural and political meanings or the multiple meanings of water. So, that water is not only perceived as H2O and water is not abstracted from cultural, political, social and economic meanings. So, thank you for asking the question. So, finally, there is a paragraph by I think one of my friends, Victoria Marshall from Singapore, who is now working at National University of Singapore. So, Victoria writes that as I was learning about the traditional water harvesting practices, I found myself making connections back to the theoretical concepts and frameworks. Did anyone make an interesting connections? I was thinking about how they related to the idea of hybrids. Thank you, Victoria, for raising this. Yes. Very interestingly, like if we look into these water harvesting practices or techniques across different parts of India, or more specifically the different ecological zones of India across north, south, east, west and northeast, then we find that yes, these harvesting techniques, these were really much in tune to the river, to the water bodies, to wetlands, marshlands, everything. So, it actually these techniques actually did not disrupt or did not intervene with the natural flow of the river, or did not intervene with the with the ecosystem resource, with wetlands or anything. And so, people were wise enough, the communities were wise, and they could wisely innovate techniques that actually could take care of the water bodies, of the rivers, for example. And they had the understanding that if these water bodies can be taken care of, then only their own needs actually will be fulfilled. So, and also people used to consider them not as owners of ecosystem resource, but as custodians of nature. So, this is a vital, this is a fundamental thing which one needs to understand, that if you see yourself as the owner of nature, or as the as the owner of an ecosystem resource, then this is of course, this is loaded with anthropocentrism. This is an anthropocentric lens that we are using. But then when you see yourself as custodians of nature, it means that yes, you can utilize the ecosystem resource for your own needs, but at the same time you have to use it keeping in mind its long term value, and you are the custodian. So, you have to protect it and you have to hand it over to your next generation. So, these kind of ideas were very much there. So, the water society metabolic relationship is very well manifested in the pre-colonial techniques. Of course, there are debates, there are some regional studies which had been conducted these days recently. I remember of course, Esha Shah doing research so far as South India is concerned, and all these things had been covered in the lectures. But yes, there are few regional studies where you find that pre-colonial period also there were some problems, there were some challenges, and just categorizing pre-colonial period as entirely naive and golden is also not historically true, correct or authentic. But then if we take a larger point of view, if we take the larger picture, then of course, we can say that pre-colonial period, the relationship between water and society was much more harmonious, and unfortunately which was replaced totally by what is known as during the colonial period, by what is known as colonial hydrology. So, all these things have been discussed in detail in the lectures, and if you have some more comments, I will be happy to address those. Then you have written that regarding the question if traditional water harvesting practices can be applied at scales. So, I think it depends on what local knowledge or wisdom is present now in whatever form. Yes, that is true, and what learning might be created so that these water practices might be shaped and sustained better. Yes, so this is exactly what was done by Anil Agarwal and Sunita Narayan and their team at CAC, Center for Science and Environment. So, if you really go through that particular book, Dying Wisdom, so there they mention, so Dying Wisdom, so they try to see like what are the different water harvesting techniques that were prevalent at different parts of India, and some of the techniques, why and how they are still existing, what are the challenges that the people and the communities are facing so far as the operational mechanisms of these harvesting techniques are concerned. And so they had done a detailed work on that, and they had concerned both consulted both archival sources and also ethnographic sources to find out like which technologies are existing, why are they existing, what are the challenges, and how they are working at scales, if they are working at scales at all. So, you please go through this particular book called Dying Wisdom, published by Center for Science and Environment. Finally, I also think, so she writes, I also think the idea of mudyscapes is interesting, as this refers to something bigger than a set of practices or traditional infrastructures, and speaks to something ecological, territorial and temporal in the patterns of the mud. I am totally floored, I am impressed by what you had written. And yes, so mudyscapes is our dream project, and mudyscapes is something which we really we are passionate about. So, mudyscapes, it is a connotation that we could come up with. So, we had conceptualized this particular thing called mudyscapes. Yeah, so I had conceptualized this with my friends who are geographers, and one particular friend, she is also a civil engineer. So they are faculty persons and researchers based at the University of Lausanne, and mudyscapes is a term which we had used so far as the the estuarine deltaic floodplains are concerned. So, which are mud and which are they are mud. So, there what you find is that it is not only water society relationship, but when we say water, we only think flowing water. But water not only means flowing water, and this becomes extremely true when we focus on the floodplains, the estuarine deltaic scapes. So, what we find is the co-production and co-evolution of water, mud and society. So, yes, territoriality and yeah, you had mentioned ecological, these become very important, and water is not only the story of flowing water and the story of technological infrastructure to harness and nurture and extract and abstract this flowing water, but also it is the story of this ecological and territorial aspects or components, including mud, including marshes, fenlands, boglands, wetlands, things that are neither land nor water, but both at the same time. Yeah. So, there are two questions from Deepika and Nabanita. How much can water harvesting technique in urban areas with densely planted high rise buildings be sufficient? Yeah. So, this is the dilemma, the paradox. So, on one hand, yes, I really appreciate this question because it appropriately captures the dilemma. So, today what is happening is that these big buildings and the big private companies are also coming up, number of private. So, if you just take the example of some of the metropolitan cities, for that matter, if I take the example of my own city, Kolkata. So, then Kolkata, the eastern part of Kolkata, which is on the wetlands. So, that eastern part, since the last 3-4 decades, it had undergone massive transformation. So, the wetlands have totally become transformed or converted into real estate. So, we have these densely densely planted or densely populated high rise buildings. And what is happening is that sometimes some of the private companies, they are trying to set up a rainwater harvesting plant on the rooftop of these buildings. But then we really need to, and then these buildings are being certified as green buildings due to some of the plantation activities that they had followed, and also due to some of these small scale rainwater harvesting plant that had been set up on the floor of the on the rooftop of these buildings. But I mean, the scale is very small, and I must be vocal, I must confess that these solutions will not be able to tackle our water needs, because most of the apartments, for example, the high rise building, just take the example of Atmosphere in Kolkata, or JW Marriott Hotel, or ITC Sonar Bangla, or the Spring Club, all these buildings one after the other, and this area is totally it has no it is not connected to piped drinking water infrastructure. So, what is happening is that so people these high rises the apartments totally depend on groundwater source. So, you can understand, you can realize the amount of water, groundwater, that is being extracted for consumption needs of these apartments, and Kolkata already stands at the seismic zone. So, any time there can be an earthquake. So, now we have become too alarmed, and so we already have been warned due to Kerala floods, but any time Kolkata will face an earthquake. So, one needs to understand that all these problems and challenges are interrelated. So, the problem of urban expansion, the problem of this or the challenge relating to real estate speculation, water needs, earthquake, floods, disaster. So, everything all these things are interconnected to each other. So, yes, so I think that answers to an extent your question. Nobonita has asked whether the efforts and concerns spent on preparing such report as Gadgil report doesn't usually get paid off just because of reluctance on the part of implementing authority. I will read the question again. The efforts and concerns spent on preparing such report as Gadgil report doesn't usually get paid off just because of reluctance on part of implement. Yeah, so this is, I do not know like whether this is reluctance or this is something else. So, I do not think it is only reluctance, I think this is very deliberate, and this is totally what to say, this is manufactured, and there is no reluctance. I mean, people are not reluctant, the political authorities are not reluctant, but I will not say that they are indifferent or reluctant, because if I say that they are indifferent and reluctant, that will actually boil down the political intensity of the situation. So, what I would like to say is that of course, there is a whole lot of pressure from the corporate lobbies, from the political lobbies, from the transnational aid agencies, and these the statecraft, the state it is just a pawn at the hands of these multiple these multinational corporations. So, you try to understand the economic pressure that is there on the state. So, these people, these unfortunately the political parties, they are only they are the pawns at the hands of these big corporate lobbies. And yes, so we have to really find out more data on this. We already have a lot of data that shows that how that talks about the strength of corporate lobbies, the strength of private industrialists, the strength of these big mining companies. So, of course, the state needs to cater to the needs of these mining companies and the construction agencies. So, I do not think it is reluctance, but I think this is very deliberate. And yes, but you can then ask that why then money was spent, why was Madhav Gadgil asked to come up with this report, because yes, during looming crisis, number of times scientific experts or scientists, they are actually asked to map the situation. But then after that there is a huge gap between the findings that are generated and the cautions that are generated, and like the prescriptions that are floated and rolled out, and how those are actually implemented. So, whole lot of political bullying, negotiations, bargains, many other complex social and political factors are there, which need to be really taken into consideration if we want to understand that why sometimes this so the state only sponsors this kind of report or research, and at the same time the state only fails to implement the solutions or the prescriptions that are generated through these reports. Yes, a question from Mahesh: do we lack environmental ethics in our society? So, this is a very this is really a very I mean what to say, it is not a simple question, of course, and it is a subjective question. So, first we really need to understand what do we mean, I mean what ethics is all about. So, it is not only environmental ethics. So, here I will become little personal, apologies, sincere apologies for that, but so far as my own understanding is concerned, I think I mean it is not only about environmental ethics, but unfortunately the ethics itself to an extent is missing from the society, and ethics, unfortunately, it has an inversely proportional relationship with capitalism, and more specifically and more importantly advanced stages of capitalism or advanced stages of global capitalism. So, more global capitalism, it is making its way. So, ethics is getting degraded from the society, and it is the decline of ethics in every form, and environmental ethics is also a part of that. So, hope I have been able to answer what I mean in a subjective way what you had actually tried to ask. Yeah. So, so yes, so you are in the middle of the third week, and please ask more questions, be more active in the online forum, and definitely I can ensure that I will address all the questions, I will take up all the questions, and please feel free to ask any question that you really want to ask. Do not think that if you have a question, but then you think that whether I should be asking this question or not, please do not hesitate. Okay. Each and every question is an important question, and not only ask question, but I would also really ask you to also provide your feedback, critical feedback, and maybe how this course has been helpful, if it has been helpful at all, so far as your own researches and your own understanding on water society relation is concerned. And I would also love to learn from you a lot, because if you are coming from other disciplines, for example, if you are coming from some natural sciences discipline, or for that matter if you are an engineer, if you are a technocrat, if you are a practitioner, please post as much as possible, and if you are involved in some projects or in any project, please let me know your practical experiences from the field, because the whole the entire the purpose of this course is not only to make you learn things, but the purpose is of this course is a kind of a mutual exchange between you and me, where together we can co-evolve understanding, realizations and strategies to address sustainability. So, the last question I will take, I guess, which is by Deepika. So, Deepika asks, in your opinion, would our situation be better if we did not have dams? So, Deepika, I would ask you to answer this question. So, I would very much like you to reflect on these on this particular question in the online platform, because so now I had talked I had talked a lot on dams, and I had talked I had shed light on the history of on the history of the emergence of these multipurpose river valley development projects in India. So, I would really appreciate, I would really be very happy if you let me know your opinion about if the situation would have been better if we did not have dams, because you already know my take on this, because I had told enough of my take. You are aware that what I would say. So, my answer you already know. So, I would like to hear from you that maybe after attending this course, or maybe from your own set of expertise and knowledge, whether you think that would our situations had been really better if India, or for that matter other parts of the world, did not have dams. But then please reflect on this particular thing from a critical point of view. Do not provide a linear answer, brainstorm, and provide a very meaningful answer to this particular question that you addressed. Yeah. So, yeah, finally, I would ask you, or I would like to hear a lot from you, and be very active, be as much active as possible, and make me active as well, because I would love to love to converse with you, love to go into conversation and dialogues with you, and we can also have some pipeline plans whether we can think about other courses, other projects, other proposals, or other meaningful ways through which we can spread this message at large, that how and why at this particular critical juncture of the Anthropocene, why we really need to understand the relationship between the complex relationship between water and society, to again as I had mentioned before, and which is the particular objective of the course, that how we can really address the larger questions of sustainability, how we can really move to a just, democratic and a sustainable world order, where water needs and water allocation rights, water entitlement of everyone will be taken care of. So, let us be as much vocal as possible, and let us turn this course into an exciting one, into an exciting venture, from where we will be able to really learn a lot. So, now this is really the last question. So, again Navanita has thanked me, and Navanita has said that yes, you have rightly said, it is not reluctance as such, multitude of political economic factors are there. Thank you Navanita. Yes, yes. So, I am very happy that so another, the last thing that I would like to say before before I wrap up is that let us be vocal as much as possible, let us be honest as much as possible, let us not be scared. Okay. So, of course, political pressures are there, of course, lot of other things are there, but the way we are perceiving things, if we see something is wrong, let us really take that up, let us also start protesting against that. It is very important. And someone was asking, I think Mahesh was talking about environmental ethics. So, the one particular way through which this ethics can be protected, through which there can be the dawn of ethics, redawn of ethics once again, is through protesting. So, once we see something wrong, if we see some injustice, if we see something wrong so far as resource allocation is concerned, let us be as much vocal as possible, and let us also bring this particular thing to the notice of people. And today it is very easy to catch attention, to draw attention. So, we have this social networking sites, we have we are in a digital world. So, let us connect together, let us create a big network, and let us really do something that will not only help us understand the situation, but help us come up with innovative radical solutions that will finally be able to alter the situation, the critical situation that we are actually encountering. Thank you very much. Be as much active as possible. Thanks.